Well, there were a lot of conversations early on before we cast. Honestly, before we even were at Sony, it was supposed to be a really small indie movie at Wayfair, and then Sony got involved later. It got cast, and it snowballed from there. But we had a lot of conversations about aging the role.
According to multiple reports and several first-hand accounts, Blake Lively's legal team issued a fresh wave of subpoenas, targeting a wide spectrum of individuals across social media platforms from known media personalities to micro-creators and even private individuals who merely shared their opinions online. And while TMZ reported only a handful of those targeted, including high-profile names like Candace Owens, Andy Sr., and Perez Hilton, the reality of this legal action runs much deeper beneath the surface. Because what TMZ and other entertainment outlets failed to mention, or perhaps were intentionally not informed about, is that the subpoenas extended beyond public figures and went straight into the territory of ordinary users, citizen journalists, and small-scale content creators operating with limited audiences but engaged voices. And the pattern is starting to feel all too familiar. First, a high-profile legal move is made, the press gets a carefully curated leak, the story focuses on recognizable names, and the bigger picture is kept hidden for as long as possible. Only now that recipients are speaking out do we start to piece together the full scope of what is happening, because last week several YouTube creators revealed that they too had been subpoenaed by Blake Lively's team, and that these subpoenas included requests for personal financial records, including bank account information, details that many are calling outrageous, inappropriate, and clearly designed to intimidate and suppress commentary. These creators are objecting strongly and publicly, and their message is clear. This is not just legal overreach, it is an attempt to chill protected speech under the guise of litigation. And to add to the mounting tension, on the very same day, users of X, formerly known as Twitter, began receiving official notifications that their personal data had been subpoenaed as well. Some of these users are lawyers, others are independent analysts, others still are everyday people, simply sharing their views. And one of those subpoenaed, a user with the handle The Spiritual Shift, shared their story. Online, they revealed
publicly did she disclose to TMZ, and we have to assume that it was her attorneys that leaked this to TMZ or her PR people. But only then did they say that it was Candace Owen and Andy Sr. and Perez Hilton. They did not disclose that on top of those subpoenas, they would be targeting smaller creators, micro creators. They didn't share on what platforms they would be seeking this information. We were notified, YouTube creators, last week about a subpoena where she is seeking.
Across their tweets, their analysis focused not on personal attacks, but on the structure of Blake Lively's claims, the nature of her legal filings, and the broader implications of celebrity influence on public perception and mainstream media narratives. And according to them, this act of questioning a powerful Hollywood narrative is what triggered the subpoena, and they are not alone. In their own words, they accused Blake Lively's team of attempting to silence dissent and of leveraging wealth and influence to control the conversation around her legal drama. With Justin Baldoni, they described receiving an official email from X attaching the subpoena and explaining that while X had not yet handed over any user data, they might be compelled to do so in the future. They were encouraged to seek legal representation if they intended to challenge the process, and links were provided to the American Civil Liberties Union and the Electronic Frontier Foundation, to organizations known for protecting speech and digital privacy. What this user said next sent a chill down the spine of creators and commentators alike. They stated that 20X users were listed by name on the version of the subpoena they received, and that those usernames were not redacted, meaning that others could now confirm whether they too were being targeted. It painted a picture of coordinated legal action against a broad swath of individuals who simply used their voices on social media. This is not about protecting reputation, this is about control. At least that is the view of many of those being targeted, and from the outside, the scale of this legal push feels increasingly disproportionate, because we are not talking about coordinated harassment campaigns or illegal leaks. We are talking about people reposting news stories, offering legal analysis, sharing doubts, and asking questions. And for that, they are being subpoenaed and asked to provide personal private information that has no direct bearing on the outcome of the case. This is why many now believe this legal campaign has crossed a line, that it is not about defamation or justice, but rather about stifling voices and suppressing critical discourse. And it raises a serious question about what kind of precedent this sets. If someone with access to massive resources can target any user who speaks about them publicly, even in a legal context, then what protections remain for those who want to engage in free speech and public discourse? As more creators come forward, it is becoming increasingly clear that this wave of subpoenas is just the beginning, and questions are now being raised about whether similar legal moves have been made on other platforms, like Reddit, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. Creators on YouTube who also use Instagram are beginning to wonder if their data is next if subpoenas will be sent to Meta, requesting the same kind of intrusive information that was demanded from Google and X. And to be clear, this is not just speculation, it is a reasonable concern, based on the trajectory of this case and the increasingly aggressive legal posture being adopted by Blake Lively's team. Because if this is about tracking a smear campaign, as she claims, then every platform where commentary has appeared becomes fair game in the eyes of her legal strategy. But here is where things get more complicated. Because while Lively's team insists that they are seeking justice for reputational harm, the reality is that she is facing increasing scrutiny about the validity and proportionality of her claims, and the burden of proof rests with her to demonstrate that she has suffered real quantifiable damage as a direct result of content produced by the individuals she is now subpoenaing. And yet, when challenged in court to provide evidence of such damages, Blake Lively reportedly refused to submit any of her business records, financial documents, or proof of lost income, citing privacy and complexity of her own financial affairs. She claims she should not be required to submit documents related to her net worth, arguing that her financial status had nothing to do with punitive damages sought by others in the case. And this inconsistency is striking. On one hand, she is demanding access to the bank statements of creators with tiny followings. On the other hand, she is resisting every attempt to produce her own financial records in response to court orders. And that contradiction is not lost on the public. The very people she is targeting are the ones who are increasingly questioning whether this lawsuit is based on verifiable damages, or if it is a narrative built to weaponize the legal system and silence commentary. This duality is becoming harder and harder to ignore, and as legal experts begin to weigh in, they are warning that the broader implications of this case are not just about one celebrity lawsuit, but about the future of digital expression and the ability of private citizens to speak critically without fear of legal retaliation. And so here we are, with July 3rd standing as a clear inflection point in the story of Blake Lively's legal campaign, the day when high-profile subpoenas turned into a full-scale sweep of online voices, when creators small and large were dragged into a courtroom drama they never signed up for, and when the lines between defamation protection and speech suppression began to blur in ways that should concern anyone who believes in the open exchange of ideas and commentary. In Part 2, we will dive into how these creators are organizing to respond, what legal options are realistically available to them, and how the court of public opinion may ultimately decide what the actual legacy of Blake Lively's legal strategy will be. As we continue this deep dive into the unraveling legal strategy of Blake Lively, it becomes impossible to ignore the growing sense of unease and resistance among the community of content creators, journalists, analysts, and everyday users who now find themselves at the receiving end of her subpoenas. In the aftermath of the July 3rd wave, those targeted have started to band together, forming quiet but determined alliances behind the scenes. As news trickled out that subpoenas had gone out to creators with just a few thousand followers, and even some who had never monetized their content, it became clear that this was not about holding power accountable. It was about making an example out of critics. The message was unmistakable: speak out, and you might get dragged into federal court. But what makes this story so significant is not just the subpoenas themselves, it is the chilling effect they create for every voice online. What happens when one celebrity uses vast legal resources to request private bank information, user metadata, and subscriber logs from people who merely commented on a public case? It shifts the power balance of online discourse dramatically. Many legal experts are beginning to voice concerns that this tactic is essentially a strategic lawsuit against public party. What began as a Hollywood legal drama between Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni has now spiraled into something much larger and much darker. On July 3rd, in a legal move that shocked both the entertainment world and the creator community, Blake Lively's legal team issued sweeping subpoenas targeting not just celebrities, but small content creators, YouTubers, and even regular social media users. These subpoenas were not just standard legal requests for information. They demanded emails, phone numbers, physical addresses, financial records, subscriber data, and even social media analytics from dozens of people. Many of these individuals had simply tweeted an opinion, uploaded commentary videos, or shared public information about the case. Now, they were being treated like suspects in a criminal investigation. This legal maneuver has been described by experts as a slap tactic, a strategic lawsuit against public participation. Slap suits are often used to intimidate critics by burying them in costly and time-consuming legal battles. They're typically deployed against journalists, whistleblowers, or activists, but in this case, the targets were YouTubers, Twitter users, Reddit posters, and TikTok creators ordinary. People whose crime was participating in public conversation about a high-profile lawsuit. The emotional toll was immediate. Creators reported receiving sudden legal notices that left them shocked, confused, and terrified. Many of them had no idea why they were being dragged into a legal case between two Hollywood stars. They were not part of any coordinated smear campaign. They had no insider information. They were simply expressing opinions, reacting to court filings, or sharing commentary based on publicly available reports. Yet the demands in these subpoenas went far beyond standard legal inquiry. Why did Blake Lively's team need banking information from a YouTuber with less than 3,000 followers? Why did they ask for subscriber transactions from someone who posted a reaction video? What purpose could possibly be served by combing through the social media analytics of small independent creators? Civil liberties groups and digital rights advocates immediately raised alarms. Organizations like the Electronic Frontier Foundation have warned that this kind of legal overreach sets a dangerous precedent. If celebrities or powerful figures can subpoena financial data from anyone who discusses them online, the chilling effect on public speech will be catastrophic. At the core of the issue is the lack of evidence supporting Lively's claims. Her legal team argues that these subpoenas are necessary to prove that she has suffered defamation and financial harm, but when pressed in court, they have failed to present clear connections between specific creators' content and any real damage to Lively's reputation. In fact, the court recently ruled that Blake Lively herself must disclose her own financial records, including business income and any documentation of claimed losses. Lively had refused to do so, arguing that her personal net worth was private, but the judge disagreed. If she's claiming financial harm, the court ruled, she must show evidence, not just demand information from others, while keeping her own finances secret. This ruling undermined a major pillar of Lively's case, exposing the imbalance in her strategy. On one hand, her team is aggressively seeking invasive data from creators. On the other hand, they're resisting transparency about her own financial situation. The optics are bad and getting worse. Public reaction has been swift and critical. Hashtag Big Brother Blake began trending across multiple platforms as users pointed out the hypocrisy and overreach of Lively's legal tactics. Creators across YouTube, 10 formerly Twitter, TikTok, and Reddit are now openly asking if this can happen to them. Who's next? One YouTuber explained it like this: imagine posting a tweet about a celebrity lawsuit, and 6 months later, you get a legal notice demanding your home address, your bank details, and your account analytics just because you dared to comment on a public story. That's what's happening right now, and it's terrifying. Creators are now pooling resources to fight back. A legal defense coalition has formed, made up of small channels and independent voices determined to push back against what they see as a blatant attempt to suppress speech. Some creators have found pro bono attorneys willing to represent them. Others are filing motions to quash the subpoenas, but the process is expensive, time-consuming, and emotionally draining. Behind the scenes, platforms like YouTube and X are being forced to respond to these legal requests. Some have issued notices to affected users, informing them of the data requests and giving them time to respond. Others are reviewing their policies to determine how much user data they are legally required to hand over. This puts tech companies in a difficult position, caught between complying with court orders and protecting user privacy. The broader implications are massive. If Blake Lively's legal team succeeds in setting this precedent, any powerful figure could use subpoenas to silence online discussion. It's a method of control not through facts or evidence, but through fear and legal exhaustion. Even more concerning is how mainstream media has handled the story. TMZ was the first outlet to report on the subpoenas, but their coverage focused only on the big names, ignoring the dozens of smaller creators also targeted. Some believe the selective reporting was intentional, part of an effort to control the narrative and downplay the scope of the subpoenas. But the internet has a way of surfacing the truth. As independent creators began to speak out, the full picture came into focus. This wasn't just about Lively and Baldoni. It was about the rights of creators, the future of digital speech, and the growing power imbalance between celebrities and the public. Legal scholars are now warning that this type of legal maneuvering could reshape the landscape of online commentary. If celebrities can subpoena critics simply for participating in public conversations, free expression is under threat. As the controversy unfolds, more creators are taking steps to secure their data, hire legal counsel, and prepare for further legal threats. The mood across creator communities is shifting from shock to resolve. Many are now vowing to fight back, not just for themselves, but for the principle of free speech online. The emotional cost is real. Creators describe sleepless nights, fear of financial ruin, and the constant stress of legal uncertainty. The chilling effect is already happening. Some creators have stopped posting. Others have deleted old videos or tweets out of fear they could be next, and yet, the backlash is growing. Civil rights groups, digital privacy advocates, and First Amendment lawyers are joining the conversation, calling out this legal campaign as an abuse of power. The case of Blake Lively versus Justin Baldoni has now become a case about much more than Hollywood egos. It has become a battle over who controls the narrative in the digital age and who has the right to speak freely about public figures. There's also a larger question about celebrity accountability. In an era where powerful people can launch PR campaigns and control media cycles, the ability of ordinary people to comment, critique, and analyze those narratives is more important than ever. If celebrities can silence that conversation through legal threats, the consequences for democracy and public discourse are profound. As legal motions continue to unfold, creators and commentators are watching closely. The outcome of this case could set legal precedents that last for decades. Will the courts protect free speech, or will they side with the powerful? For now, the fight continues. Creators are speaking out, lawyers are filing motions, platforms are reviewing policies, and the public is waking up to the reality that online speech is no longer as safe as it once seemed. In the next chapter of this story, we will explore how Google, YouTube, X, and other tech companies are responding behind the scenes. We'll look at what rights creators actually have when facing subpoenas, and how legal experts are framing the defenses that could stop this trend before it spreads further. But one thing is already clear: this is not just a lawsuit, it's a warning. A warning about what happens when powerful celebrities use the legal system not to seek justice, but to control public conversation, intimidate critics, and reshape the rules of digital speech. The world is watching, and for creators everywhere, the stakes have never been higher. Could cost thousands of dollars even before the matter is heard in court. And what happens if the motion fails? Not only do they lose the money spent fighting the subpoena, but they may still be forced to hand over sensitive information. The risk is high and the outcome uncertain. A handful of digital rights organizations have taken note, including the Electronic Frontier Foundation and the American Civil Liberties Union, both of which advocate for online speech privacy and legal reform to protect creators from this kind of overreach. However, even these organizations are limited in what they can do, unless there is a clear pattern of abuse or a violation of constitutional protections. And in this case, the blurry line between defamation, investigation, and punitive intimidation makes the legal waters murky. Because Blake Lively is conducting her campaign within the structure of a lawsuit, the rules that apply to defamation or harassment do not necessarily protect the targeted creators from being swept into the process. It is a loophole, some would argue, and one that is being exploited in full view of the public. What is perhaps most troubling is how the platforms themselves are handling these requests. X, for example, notified users that their data may be handed over and encouraged them to seek legal help. YouTube has yet to publicly confirm how many creators have been subpoenaed or what information has been requested, and Google, the parent company of YouTube, is bound by its own policies and legal obligations, which may include producing certain records. If legally compelled to do so, this means creators cannot rely on platforms alone to protect them. And in most cases, users are left to defend themselves, often without the resources or knowledge to do so effectively. As more details surface, public reaction has begun to shift. Initially, there was confusion and some skepticism about what was really happening. But as creators started sharing their stories and legal experts confirmed the extent of the subpoenas, outrage began to build. The hashtag subpoena silence has emerged on X, drawing attention to the situation and raising awareness about what many now consider a serious attack on digital expression. Memes, posts, and videos are circulating, not just criticizing Blake Lively, but also questioning the broader trend of celebrities weaponizing the legal system to control public discourse. In one particularly telling moment, a creator shared that they had never been monetized, had fewer than 3,000 followers, and had only ever shared their legal interpretation of public filings. Yet they too received a subpoena, demanding their private information. The question everyone is now asking is, what does this accomplish if the people being targeted have not broken any laws or published anything that was not already public record? Then what is the purpose of collecting their data? And the answer that seems to be forming is simple: control. This is about creating fear, setting a precedent, and deterring others from speaking up. And as more legal professionals begin to weigh in, it becomes clearer that Blake Lively's case faces significant challenges. Not only must she prove that a coordinated smear campaign existed, but she must also show that it caused measurable damage to her reputation and income, and yet when asked to provide evidence of those damages in court, she refused to produce financial records, arguing they were too complicated or irrelevant. The judge, however, ruled that if she is going to claim her businesses suffered as a result of the alleged campaign, she must provide documentation to support that claim. And this contradiction has not gone unnoticed. How can someone demand full financial transparency from strangers on the internet while refusing to provide their own financial records in support of the very claim that triggered those subpoenas? It is a contradiction that undermines the credibility of her legal strategy and further fuels the argument that this is not about justice but about narrative control and retaliation. And it is not just legal experts raising alarms. Some journalists have begun calling the subpoenas a public relations disaster and a blatant example of celebrity overreach. One analyst described it as using a sledgehammer to swat a fly, because targeting small creators with massive legal demands for minimal content contributions creates a perception of bullying, not justice. Meanwhile, the court of public opinion continues to shift. Fans who once supported Blake Lively are expressing discomfort and even anger over her tactics. Others who were neutral are now paying closer attention and questioning whether this case is about protecting reputation or silencing dissent. Some celebrities have reportedly begun distancing themselves from the controversy, and at least one publicist described the situation as a nightmare scenario where a star known for charm and elegance suddenly becomes synonymous with censorship, lawsuits, and intimidation. And then there is the emotional toll. Several creators have shared how the subpoena experience has affected their mental health. Some have taken breaks from posting. Others are considering leaving social media entirely. The fear of being sued, losing access to platforms, or having private data exposed is overwhelming for many who never expected to be caught in the middle of a celebrity legal dispute. And in some cases, it is not just the creators being affected, but their families, friends, and professional contacts, all of whom are now dealing with the uncertainty of what information might be shared or used in court. This ripple effect is massive and growing. And the deeper issue here is not just about Blake Lively, it is about what kind of internet we want to live in: one where open discussion is welcomed, or one where speech is limited to only those who can afford to defend it legally. And if Blake Lively's strategy succeeds, it could become a model for other celebrities, public figures, and corporations to use against critics, and the result could be a digital landscape where fear replaces conversation and lawsuits replace debate. But this is not the end of the story. In our final part, we will examine what creators can do now, what legal options remain, and how the culture of accountability and solidarity may become the only effective countermeasure against this kind of legal suppression. Because if one voice can be silenced, so can many. But if many stand together, the cost of suppression rises dramatically. And that is the truth at the heart of this unfolding legal war, a battle not just for reputation but for the right to speak freely in a digital world that is watching and remembering. Blake Lively has gone from Hollywood darling to legal menace in the blink of an eye. What started as a lawsuit against Justin Baldoni has turned into a full-blown campaign against the internet, with subpoenas flying out like party invitations to anyone who dared to tweet, post, or upload their thoughts about her case. The July 3rd subpoena wave wasn't just about getting answers, it was about sending a message: say something we don't like and we'll drag you into court. But here's the kicker: most of the people being targeted aren't even creators in the traditional sense. Some are lawyers, some are fans. Some just hit retweet and suddenly they're part of a federal subpoena list. It's wild, it's invasive, and it's looking less like legal strategy and more like a scorched earth PR disaster. Creators are fighting back, forming legal coalitions, challenging subpoenas, and exposing how Hollywood power players are abusing the system. Meanwhile, Lively refuses to hand over her own financial records while demanding bank statements from strangers. And let's not forget, she's doing all this while accusing others of being part of a conspiracy she can't prove. The court already forced her to cough up business records because she claimed she lost money over this drama, but she didn't want to show proof. Instead, she said it was complicated, which is code for I have no evidence. And now even the judge is side-eyeing her excuses. And here's where it all comes crashing down. Lively's legal attack is starting to look like a big budget flop, the kind of production that wastes millions only to get canceled after the pilot. Public opinion is turning fast. Fans are bailing, creators are louder than ever, and platforms like X and YouTube are quietly backing off, hoping not to get caught in the crossfire. In the end, this isn't about justice, it's about control. It's about silencing dissent and weaponizing the legal system to punish critics, but the internet remembers. And while Lively might win a headline or two, she's losing the trust of a generation who sees right through the glitter and into the grit. This is not just a bad look, it's a legacy breaker, and if Hollywood's watching, they should be taking notes. Because the age of unchecked celebrity power just met its algorithmic reckoning. This video provides commentary and analysis on public legal filings and statements from representatives. All parties are presumed innocent until proven otherwise. This content is intended for educational and informational purposes under fair use.